There are two ways of viewing the world, says Oswald Spengler. The first sees existence as fate-laden. Every action is imbued with meaning. It's a world filled with enchantment. The second view, however, dissects and rationalizes away this enchantment, reducing everything to simple cause and effect. In every culture, a battle rages between these two worldviews. In the first volume of his masterpiece, Decline of the West, Spengler lays out the difference between two fundamental perceptions of reality: the destiny idea versus the causality principle. He argues that in early springtime cultures, the destiny idea prevails, but as a civilization matures and enters its late stage, the causality principle takes over. So what are these two conflicting worldviews, and why are they so crucial to a culture's well-being? According to Spengler, destiny is the guiding force of history. It can be felt and inwardly lived, but never described or defined through cold, rational terms. It is the inner certainty that shapes a culture's unique characteristics from its very birth, determining its inevitable course of growth. Unlike causality, which is a matter of the intellect and scientific inquiry, destiny is a matter of life experience and intuition. It is physiognomic. Therefore, it is best expressed through art and religion, which are the language of a culture's unique soul. Spengler writes, "Primitive man feels destiny dimly and anxiously, while for the man of a high culture it is definite enough to become his vision of the world, though this vision is communicable only through religion and art, never through notions and proofs." Spengler describes destiny as an organic logic which gives meaning to the world. It is often veiled in symbolism and vague language, yet clearly understood. Words like luck or doom may not make sense when analyzed rationally, but they are nonetheless felt and comprehended on a deep level. The opposing worldview to the destiny idea is the causality principle. Causality is concerned with the law-bound, describable, and rational. It is the domain of science and the intellect. While destiny governs the world as history, always moving forward, irreversible like time, causality's domain is the world as nature, timeless and predictable, static space. Causality reduces everything to simple cause and effect, stripping the world of meaning and enchantment. The best way to understand the dichotomy between destiny and causality is by an example. In an old tale recounted by Aristotle explaining the philosophy of Democritus, the death of a prominent man is described. When he was strolling along a beach, an eagle had dropped a turtle on his head. Why? It was recalled that an oracle had said that he would die of a bolt from Zeus. This had been thought to be a prediction of death by a stroke of lightning. However, someone pointed out that the eagle was a bird sacred to Zeus. Thus, the oracle was fulfilled. This explanation satisfied most Greeks, but not Democritus. He went to the beach and observed the habits of eagles. He found that they were fond of turtle meat. In order to get at it, an eagle would seize a turtle in his phalanx, fly into the air with it, and drop it on a rock to crack the shell. This observation, together with the fact that the deceased had been bald, provided an explanation that satisfied Democritus. This tale illustrates Spengler's two ways of viewing the world. The Greeks who believed that the oracle involving Zeus had resulted in the death of the man were viewing the world through destiny. The man's death was fated. But Democritus, who found a natural, rational explanation for the man's death, requiring no gods or prophecy, was operating under the causality principle. Though certainly a rare happenstance, the death of the man was completely logical. Spengler posits that the emphasis on causality is a symptom of a culture's late stage. As a civilization becomes more outwardly focused, technical, and mechanistic, it loses its inner creative vitality. This is a move from the vital thing becoming of a culture to the static thing become of a civilization. This shift is often represented by rationalistic philosophies that take hold over a culture and are made up of a late type dubbed the Socratic man. Pulling from his great influence Nietzsche, Spengler put forward Socrates as an exemplar of the shift in thinking from destiny to causality. Socrates birthed a philosophy that posited that the pursuit of eudaimonia, roughly translated to happiness or welfare, motivated all human action, and that virtue and knowledge were intrinsically linked to this state of ultimate happiness. In doing so, he gave the intellect priority as the path to a good life and downplayed irrational beliefs and passions. Man should comprehend what he desires and ignore impulses he can't explain. His entire philosophy is best summed up by the statement uttered during his trial: "The unexamined life is not worth living." A causal philosophy through and through. Socrates' inclination toward rationality led him to question the traditional pantheon of gods and to interrogate his fellow citizens, exposing them as unwise. Ultimately, he undermined the Greeks' idea of destiny and replaced it with causality. Nietzsche pointed out how Socrates' prioritization of the intellect placed all values beneath rational truth, ignoring myth, passion, and enchantment. And Socrates failed to replace these with anything other than his rationalism. Nietzsche went so far as to call Socrates' rationalism a disease that led to degeneration. Reason at any price was in itself only a disease, another kind of disease, and by no means a return to virtue, to health, and to happiness. To be obliged to fight the instincts, this is the formula of degeneration. Spengler writes that the period of Socrates' life was a major shift for the antique world, a shift that ultimately signaled a transition from a thriving culture to a petrified civilization. But Socrates was not an isolated case. Rather, he represented an archetypal figure who embodies the causal philosophy that accompanies this shift in every culture. Spengler writes, "Every late philosophy contains this critical protest against the uncritical intuitiveness of the spring. In the Western culture, Immanuel Kant and other key Enlightenment figures embodied causality and thus this shift from culture to civilization. The emphasis on rationalism and the scientific method overtook the Gothic religion of earlier periods." Interestingly, Spengler believed the causal worldview is not only a rebellion against earlier culture forms, but against life itself. He says that the construction of elaborate intellectual systems are a form of defense against life and the fear of death, because by dissecting every aspect of a thing, which causality surely does, we destroy said thing in the process. To understand a living organism, we dissect its dead corpse, like a frog in science class. Causality does this to life. Destiny, on the other hand, is creative, more akin to really living. Spengler writes about this distinction. Causality requires us to distinguish, and in distinguishing to dissect and destroy, whereas destiny is creative through and through, and thus destiny is related to life and causality to death. So now we understand the difference between causality and destiny. This fundamental opposition affects every culture, argues Spengler. However, the destiny idea and causality principle do not influence every culture in the same manner. Just as he believed every culture was unique, so too was each culture's vision of destiny. In the classical civilization, the Greco-Roman world, the concept of destiny was the moira. It represented a person's allotted portion or boundary in life, including their destiny and lifespan. This was enforced by three goddesses, often referred to as the Fates, who controlled the metaphorical thread of a mortal's existence. They established a cosmic, inescapable order that even the gods were bound to. Unlike the Faustian or Western destiny idea, Moira had little to do with the inner character of an individual, but only his or her physicality. There was nothing special about Oedipus, for example, but all that mattered was that he stumbled physically upon his fate, and was bound to it. In the Arabian or Magian civilization, destiny is kismet, fate handed down directly by God. Here, the story of Job is the quintessential tragedy that embodies the Magian destiny idea. God directs fate toward Job, who simply must suffer God's will. In the Western culture, destiny is weird. W-Y-R-D, that is, meaning a personal fate. A man's character becomes his destiny. It comes from within rather than any gods or external source. Who you are determines your life course. In the West today, and throughout history, we can see how the destiny idea and causality principle have ultimately played out. Causality no doubt dominates the Western ethos, as rationalism and materialism supplanted the enchantment of ages long past. Though the West might be in its latter stages of cultural development, this does not rule out the possibility of embracing the destiny idea on a personal level. Spengler himself claimed that to avoid viewing the world through the lens of destiny was an impossible task, even for the most dedicated causalists. He writes, "In the destiny idea, the soul reveals its world longing, its desire to rise into the light, to accomplish and actualize its vocation. To no man is it entirely alien, and not before one has become the unanchored late man of the megalopolis is original vision quite overpowered by matter-of-fact feeling and mechanizing thought. Even then, in some intense hour, the lost vision comes back to one with terrible clearness, shattering in a moment all the causality of the world's surface."